About halfway through Yakuza 2, I was very convinced that I was gonna play through all the Yakuza games throughout the next few months. So I went and I kinda impulse bought the Yakuza collection and Yakuza 6. And that brings us here to Yakuza 3, the PS4 version that is in the Yakuza collection. It is slightly different and also more appealing than the original English version on the PS3, since this one does not have any cut content and of course runs much better. Now all of my reviews of Yakuza games up until the 6th will be on PS4, and from then on, if I decide to keep going, it will probably be on PC. But that doesn't matter right now. Right now we're looking at Yakuza 3, a game that's very unique in its plot and even setting, taking place a few years after the events of Yakuza 2. Now Kiryu, a retired man, or at least retired from the Yakuza world, now taking care of this orphanage in a small island of Japan, Ryukyu, with the Haruka, a character I didn't mention in my previous Yakuza 2 review, since her character there only became relevant later in the game for spoiler reasons, even if she is a character that has been in the whole series. Yakuza 3 is very interesting for this reason, and most games would have this pseudo-retirement idea as just a small opening or even maybe just a cutscene, but here it's a huge piece of the story. If there weren't 3 sequels after this one, I would feel bad in spoiling that our main character eventually is brought back to the Yakuza world. But you'll be surprised in how long you end up playing in this Ryukyu map. While smaller than Shinjuku, it is very detailed and full of activities, much like the other map in Yakuza 2, but this time with a completely new aesthetic. It's a small island and there's a much more tropical feeling to it. There is also a small town vibe with a community market. Our orphanage is by the beach. This is the first Yakuza numbered story to not have Hase Seisho involved in the writing, and the first thing to notice is how much more wholesome this game is, which I guess comes with the setting of taking care of kids. There is still a more traditional Yakuza story here, but it never reaches the heights of the craziness of the second Yakuza game, in my opinion, even with its cast of colorful villains. But I still enjoyed it quite a lot. Maybe it was the change of mood and setting, but even with such a similar gameplay, it felt like a breath of fresh air. Which leads me to talk about said gameplay. The core is almost the same, with some small changes to the basic combos, now being a press longer, which does take a bit to get used to, but it is a positive, as does bring a bit more variety and complexity to the combat. Something else that went up in complexity in this game was the weapons and equipable armor, now with a bigger focus on them even being able to upgrade. But unfortunately they keep a lot of the same low durability on the weapon side, and also now you cannot keep the weapons you find in battle, which seems like a byproduct of now being able to change weapons with the D-pad rather than using the inventory menu, which is an upgrade for sure. The leveling system is back, now with a forced choice to level up. This gives you new moves as the other ones did, but also the choice to turn the hit gauge bar into a special red hit gauge. And this will allow you to also perform newer and stronger abilities, while your character has its hit gauge bar filled up or near filled up, depending on how much you level up these choices. Also, I think this is a good part to correct myself on the Yakuza 2 review, where I call the hit gauge a fury mode, which doesn't quite describe it right. It's more of an energy bar that you fill up by doing well in the fight or by using items, and then you can use that energy to do special attacks. Abilities can also be learned through completing some specific side missions, but more on that later. Also, comparing to Yakuza 2, a lot has changed in terms of random encounters, as this was the first 7th generation mainline Yakuza game. They definitely try and go for a more seamless experience in combat, but it's somewhat half-hearted. Now, going from the talking to the actual fighting in the random encounter is seamless, with people gathering around you to create the invisible wall and then the camera panning behind you. It is a cool effect, but it doesn't really help with the problem I had with Yakuza 2 where getting in and out of a fight can get a bit tedious if you get caught in a few in a row. And getting out of a fight is just a fade to black like other games. At the end of the day, combat itself is a lot better, but the things around it can feel more like gradual steps, which is a bit disappointing for a sequel that crosses generations. Also important to mention is this is the first numbered Yakuza game to have a more traditional third-person camera opposed to the mostly fixed camera angles of its predecessors, even if those did have small control over the camera in some scenes. Minigames though, the other huge piece of the Yakuza gameplay, is way bigger than before here. With a new island comes a whole lot of new addictions. I joked before that Yakuza 2 being able to develop a gambling addiction, but I'm pretty sure Yakuza 3 has developed an addiction in me in this horrible, up to the chance dice game called CeeLo. It's funny these minigames are the ones taking the most advantage of what at the time was new hardware, billiards, darts, and even an actual unique shoot 'em up arcade game. Yakuza games have this thing where it's very easy to just get lost in its side activities. In fact, with this game, this happened to me quite hardcore, as I spent the first couple of days with this game just doing side missions and minigames. I have spent maybe over half a day running a hostess bar, not because it was the best thing to do, but because it was oddly easy to min-max and because completing it gives you a ton of money. And above all that, because it's funny. And that's a trend with all of these side activities. They are very funny, or at least heartwarming in some way or another. Even if the missions themselves are very simple, the writing makes them very compelling to do. Also, something I notice is it seems on average, these side missions are shorter than they were in Yakuza 2, but there are a lot more of them and a lot more variety in what you do in these side missions. Like for example, one of these has you carrying ice cream across a busy street trying not to drop it. And little things like this end up creating this very addictive loop of completing side missions and seeing what the next one is gonna be like and getting rewarded for them. And this is also where the karaoke makes its first appearance. I thought I should mention that given the cult or meme status that this specific minigame has gotten through the years. And honestly, if I had more free time, I might have 100%ed it. This game is crack. The rewards you get now are about the same as the game before, but they fixed my biggest problem. That was the minimal amount of XP you get from these side missions. Now it feels a lot more balanced, and of course it makes it a lot more compelling to engage with them. Now finally, I'll speak on a more technical side of this game. Graphically, it's a PS3 game, and character models and a lot of the textures very much look like something out of that time, even if I've played the remastered version on the PS4, which runs at a great and locked 60 FPS. And the amount of crowds that exist in open areas can sometimes be more annoying than immersive, as you run into them going from place to place. This is specifically a problem on the Shinjuku map with its much more busy streets, but also because of the level of detail in every little thing it does made it age in a way that it still doesn't look bad today, and obviously I had no problem with it. Soundtrack wise, it's a Yakuza game. It sounds good and it's appropriate, but I don't think I'm going to be listening to this one outside of the game, which is not a bad thing, just really not breaking any barriers here. Overall, Yakuza 3 is a great game, and it was a big step forward in the things that make Yakuza such a unique experience. Even if the story might feel more like a step sideways than an actual push forward, I don't mind it. I enjoyed the approach. It felt like a breath of fresh air, like I mentioned before. And the more wholesome feeling to its story does help making the difference between a serious main story and the goofy side missions a lot less stark. And for that and all the reasons I gave before, specifically about this game being crack, I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. It's not as crazy as 2 in its story, but it's amazing in its own way. I highly recommend you play it. It is thankfully, as of making this video, an easy to get game both on PS3 and PS4 digitally and also physically on PS4 as it's being sold in most retail stores, and that's good compared to the last game that is kinda lost in time at the moment for various reasons. Even though I would recommend the PS4 version, not only because it looks better and runs better, but also because it has no cut content from the Japanese version, even if the cut content is mostly some small mini games. And I hope you enjoyed this review and it made you want to go check out this game. And if not, then that it made you want to check out other videos of mine and subscribe and maybe please, maybe both, maybe like and thanks anyways for watching and have a nice day, I guess. I need to go to the bathroom right now. I'm sorry.